When I was in the 6th grade, I decided I wanted to become a lawyer. That's why, when I entered high school, I was interested in such subjects as mathematics, to help me think logically, history, to help me understand the past and present and project into the future, English composition, to give me the opportunity to express my thoughts and philosophy, and psychology, to give me the understanding of the functioning of the human mind. I joined the debating club at San High, primarily to become an expert in argumentation. I later entered the Detroit College of Law, but I discontinued after a year because I decided that I wanted to get married when I was 21, and I knew that the girl I was to marry would be the most important influence for good in my life. That's true, of course, of everyone. A husband or wife is the greatest environmental influence for any man or woman. I dropped out of law school because I felt I couldn't make a large enough income as a lawyer until I was at least 35 years of age. It's unethical for a lawyer to solicit clients. But as a salesman, I could call on all the prospects I wanted to. My income would be contingent upon my ability and its application, and I knew I could sell. Moreover, I reasoned that it was possible to make and save enough money through selling to retire at the age of 30, go back to school, study law, and enter a legal and political career. Besides, I said to myself, I can then handle the law cases I want to handle, not those I have to. Jessie and I had met at San High. Our courtship and my love for her can be expressed by the words of Mary Carolyn Davies' song, Why I Love You. Why do I love you? I love you not only for what you are, but for what I am when I am with you. Not only for what you have made of yourself, but for what you are making of me. After 2 years at San High, I'd moved to Detroit and entered Northwestern High School. We corresponded often. Jessie and her mother would sometimes visit my mother and me, and I made several trips to Chicago. I concluded that it would be best to establish my own insurance agency in Chicago. My mother wrote to Harry Gilbert, who was the officer we did business with for the United States Casualty Company and the New Amsterdam Casualty Company. Mr. Gilbert responded that he would be pleased to have me represent the two companies in Illinois, but I would first have to get permission to make a home office connection from the general agent in Chicago, who already had an exclusive arrangement. I made arrangements to meet with the general agent. I just had to sell him. My whole program depended on his permission. But I was a salesman by vocation, and I knew from experience that if you want something, you have to go after it. The general agent was very courteous, and I'll never forget what he said. I'll give you permission, but you'll be out of business in 6 months. It's difficult to sell in Chicago. If you appoint agents, you'll have nothing but trouble, and you'll lose money. I'll always be grateful to him for not interfering with my opportunity. So in November 1922, I established my agency under the name of Combined Registry Company. My working capital was $100, but I was debt-free, and my overhead expense was low, since I rented desk space at $25 a month from Richard H. Pickering. Mr. Pickering was a real inspiration to me, and he was most helpful in giving good advice. For example, when it came to having my name on the lobby directory, he asked me, "How do you want your name listed?" C. Stone, I responded. At school, and up to that time, that was the way I signed my name. "What are you ashamed of?" he asked. "What do you mean?" "Well, don't you have a first name and a second name?" "Yes, William Clement Stone." Did you ever stop to consider that there are thousands of C. Stones, but the chances are that in the entire United States, there is only one W. Clement Stone? This appealed to my self-esteem. Only one W. Clement Stone, I thought. And ever since, that has been the way I signed my name. The wedding was set for June. I wanted to acquire as much cash as I could before then, so I didn't waste time. On my first day, I worked on North Clark Street in Rogers Park, within a few blocks of the place where I was staying. I made 54 sales that day. Then I knew that Chicago would be an easy place to sell in, and that I would be in business for more than 6 months. I was motivated to work hard to establish my business and get the money I needed to marry the girl I loved. This is understandable, for you may use reason to motivate yourself and appeal to reason to motivate others, but the inner urge of your feelings, emotions, instincts, and ingrained habits give you the go power that puts you into action. A good salesman has confidence in himself. He knows what he can do, and necessity often forces him to do it. While I was engaged in personal sales, my earnings were what many considered exceedingly high. Yet it seemed there was always a need for money. Payments on the car, payments on the furniture, payments on life insurance. Perhaps it was because I bought what I wanted, then had to work like blazes to pay for it. I'd leave home in the morning with very little cash, for I knew I'd have substantial sums by the end of the day. For example, the first time I worked Joliet, Illinois, I arrived at 8:30 in the morning with 10 cents in my pocket. That didn't bother me. On the contrary, it inspired me. I checked into the Woodruff Inn, then walked across the street and had breakfast, a hot dog and a glass of milk. There's been inflation since. Joliet was only 40 miles from my home, yet I took the train instead of driving and stayed at a hotel instead of returning home each night. On the train, I'd relax, for I had developed the ability to sleep anywhere, at any time, under almost any circumstances. So in a railroad coach, I just put my elbow on the windowsill, rest my head on my hand, and fall asleep. But I always did something more before falling asleep. I'd condition my mind. I prayed for guidance and help. Staying at a hotel instead of returning home each night gave me a minimum of 10 hours sleep, for traveling time was saved. With the extra sleep, I'd be in peak condition. When I sold, I deliberately got keyed up and put everything I had into my sales presentation. Many salesmen have poor days because they are fatigued. Their batteries need recharging. They need rest. But when I called on my prospect, I was rested. Again, before I called on a prospect, I conditioned my mind. And when I made my sales presentation, my energies were concentrated on one thing only, the job at hand. To make the sale in the shortest possible space of time, in a manner that would clearly give the purchaser a concept of what he was buying, and to sow seeds of thought so he would renew his policy year after year on the renewal date with little sales resistance. For I realized one way to make a fortune is to sell a necessity that is low in cost and repeats. The fortune is made in the repeat business. At Joliet, I made my greatest sales record up to that time, an average of 72 policies per day for 9 working days. And it was the morning after that eventful day, when I sold 122 policies, that I resolved to begin to multiply myself to start building an organization. At the end of that day, I was happy, but tired. I went to bed earlier than usual, and that night I sold policies in my sleep. The next morning, I realized I'd reached my peak in personal sales. At breakfast, I reasoned. If I make 122 sales each day and then sell policies in my sleep, it won't be conducive to a healthy mind. Now is the time to build an organization. Now is the time to multiply myself.